The blood on Lily Whitmore's hands would not wash away no matter how hard she scrubbed them in the basin of cold water. Though it had been 3 days since she watched her employer murder that prospector in the alley behind the Silver Crown Saloon in Gila Bend, Arizona. She stood in the cramped room above the general store where she had been hiding, her fingers raw and trembling, knowing that every minute she stayed in this town brought her closer to joining that poor man in the ground. The richest man in the Arizona territory, Marcus Thorne, owned everything worth owning in Gila Bend, including the sheriff, the judge, and the loyalty of most men who valued their lives and livelihoods. It was September of 1878, and the heat still clung to the desert town like a suffocating blanket even as evening approached. Lily pressed her forehead against the warped glass of the window and watched the dusty street below, where men on horseback rode past, and women in their simple dresses hurried home before dark. She had worked as a bookkeeper in Thorne's office for 2 years, trusted with his ledgers and his secrets, never imagining she would witness him put a bullet in a man's chest over a disputed mining claim. The knock on her door made her jump so violently that she knocked the basin over, water spilling across the worn floorboards. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she backed toward the far wall, searching desperately for something to use as a weapon. "Miss Whitmore, it's Quinn Jameson," a man's voice called through the door, low and steady. "Sam Carter sent me. He said you needed help getting to Tucson." Lily's hands shook as she gripped the back of the single chair in the room. Sam Carter ran the general store downstairs and was one of the few men in Gila Bend who had not sold his soul to Marcus Thorne. She had confided in him yesterday, desperate and terrified, begging him to help her reach the federal marshal in Tucson before Thorne's men found her. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" she called back, her voice stronger than she felt. "Sam said to tell you that your mama's recipe for apple butter is the best thing he ever tasted, and that you promised to write it down for his wife before all this trouble started." Lily closed her eyes. Only Sam knew about that conversation. She crossed the room and opened the door just wide enough to see the man standing in the narrow hallway. Quinn Jameson was tall and lean, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that needed cutting. He wore dusty trail clothes and a gun belt slung low on his hips, and his eyes were the color of whiskey in lamplight. There was a hardness to his face that spoke of difficult years, but when he looked at her, something in his expression softened. "We need to leave within the hour," he said quietly. "Thorne's men are watching the roads, but I know trails through the desert that they would not think to follow. Can you ride?" "Yes," Lily said, though her experience was limited to the gentle mare her father had kept on their farm in Kansas, years before he died and left her alone in the world. "Pack light. Bring water if you have it, and anything you cannot live without. We will be riding hard and fast for the next few days." Quinn turned to leave, but Lily caught his sleeve. "Why are you helping me? Sam must be paying you, but this is dangerous. Thorne has offered $1,000 to anyone who brings me back to him." Quinn's jaw tightened. "I have my reasons for wanting to see Marcus Thorne face justice. The money Sam is offering will help, but that is not why I am doing this." He met her eyes, and she saw something fierce and uncompromising there. "I lost my younger brother to Thorne's greed 2 years ago. Daniel had a claim that Thorne wanted, and when Daniel would not sell, there was a fire. They said it was an accident, but I knew better. I have been waiting for a chance to bring that man down, and your testimony might finally do it." The grief in his voice was raw despite the time that had passed, and Lily felt her own throat tighten with emotion. "I am sorry about your brother." "So am I." Quinn stepped back. "Be ready when I knock again. We leave at full dark." The hour passed in a blur of anxious preparation. Lily changed into the most practical clothing she owned, a split riding skirt and a simple blouse, and tied her long blonde hair back with a strip of leather. She packed a small bag with a change of clothes, her mother's silver locket, and the leather journal where she had carefully documented every illegal transaction she had discovered in Thorne's ledgers. That journal was her insurance and her weapon, proof of fraud, theft, and murder that would convince even a bought judge that Marcus Thorne belonged in prison or at the end of a rope. When Quinn knocked again, she was waiting. Sam Carter was with him, his weathered face creased with worry. "I got you supplies for the trail," Sam said, pressing a bundle into her hands. "There is dried meat, hardtack, and coffee. Quinn knows what he is doing, Miss Whitmore. You trust him, you hear me?" "I will. Thank you, Sam, for everything." The older man's eyes were damp. Your mama was good to my family when we first came to this town. I owe her memory better than letting her daughter get murdered by that devil Thorne." He squeezed her shoulder. "You get to Tucson, and you tell that federal marshal everything. Make sure that bastard pays for what he has done." Quinn led her down the back stairs and through the dark alley behind the general store. 2 horses waited there, saddled and ready. Quinn's was a rangy buckskin gelding with intelligent eyes, and the other was a sturdy bay mare with a white star on her forehead. "Her name is Juniper," Quinn said, helping Lily secure her bag to the saddle. "She has good stamina and a calm disposition. Stay close to me and do exactly what I say, especially if we run into trouble." Lily nodded and let Quinn help her mount. His hands were strong and steady on her waist, and even through her fear, she felt a strange flutter in her chest at his nearness. She pushed the feeling aside and gathered the reins, focusing on the task ahead. They walked the horses quietly through the back ways of Gila Bend, avoiding the main street where Thorne's men would be watching. The town was small, barely more than a collection of adobe buildings and false-fronted shops clustered around the stage road. But Marcus Thorne's influence reached into every corner of it. Lily kept her head down and her hat pulled low, praying they would make it to the open desert without being spotted. They were almost clear of the town when a shout rang out behind them. Lily twisted in the saddle and saw 3 riders emerging from the shadows near the stable, their horses lunging into a gallop. "Ride!" Quinn commanded, and suddenly they were racing across the hard-pan desert, the horses' hooves pounding against the earth. The night air was cool against Lily's face as Juniper stretched into a run, following Quinn's buckskin into the darkness. Behind them, the sound of pursuing hoofbeats grew louder. Quinn led them off the main trail and into rougher country, weaving between stands of creosote and mesquite. The moon was 3/4 full, providing just enough light to see by, but the terrain was treacherous with hidden rocks and sudden washes. Lily clung to the saddle and trusted Juniper to follow Quinn's lead, her heart in her throat. A gunshot cracked through the night, and Lily flinched. Quinn glanced back at her, his face grim in the moonlight. "Keep riding. Do not stop no matter what." They plunged into a dry riverbed, the horses sliding down the sandy bank. Quinn turned them upstream, following the wash as it curved between high banks. The pursuers' voices echoed behind them, but the twisting course of the wash made it harder for them to get a clear shot. Quinn pushed them hard for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, until finally he led them up out of the wash and onto a rocky plateau where the ground would show fewer tracks. He slowed the horses to a walk, letting them catch their breath, and circled back to where Lily had stopped, Juniper's sides heaving. "Are you hurt?" he asked urgently. "No. Are they still following us?" Quinn listened for a long moment, his head cocked. "I do not hear them. They probably lost our trail in the wash, but they will be back at first light with more men. We need to put as many miles behind us as possible before dawn." They rode through the night, stopping only briefly to rest the horses and take water. Quinn led them through a landscape of savage beauty, all sharp peaks and deep shadows, scattered saguaro cacti standing like silent sentinels in the darkness. Lily had never been this far from town, and despite her fear, she found herself awed by the wild emptiness of the desert. As the sky began to lighten in the east, Quinn finally called a halt in a narrow canyon where a seep of water fed a small pool surrounded by willows. "We will rest here through the heat of the day," he said, swinging down from his saddle. "There is cover, and the horses need water and rest." Lily dismounted less gracefully, her legs trembling with fatigue. She had ridden before, but never all night, and every muscle in her body ached. Quinn caught her elbow as she stumbled, steadying her. "You did well," he said, and there was approval in his voice that warmed her, despite everything. "Not many women could have kept that pace." "Not many women have a murderer chasing them across the desert," Lily said, trying for levity and failing. Now that they had stopped, the full weight of her situation was crashing down on her. She sank onto a flat rock near the water and put her face in her hands. Quinn was quiet for a moment, tending to the horses. Then she heard him approach and felt him sit down beside her, close but not touching. "Tell me what happened," he said gently. "Sam only said that you witnessed Thorne kill someone." Lily took a shaky breath and told him everything, how she had been working late in Thorne's office, finishing the ledgers for the month, how she had heard angry voices in the alley below and looked out to see Thorne arguing with a prospector named William Hayes. Hayes had struck gold on a claim just outside of town, and Thorne had been pressuring him to sell for a fraction of what it was worth. Hayes had refused, said he would go to the territorial governor if Thorne did not leave him alone, and Thorne had pulled a gun and shot him twice in the chest, as casually as swatting a fly. "I must have made a sound," Lily said, her voice breaking, "because Thorne looked up and saw me in the window. I ran, grabbed what I could, and hid at Sam's store. The next morning, the sheriff was saying that Hayes had been killed by bandits on the road out of town, and I knew that if I came forward, I would be next." Quinn's hand found hers, his fingers warm and strong. "You will not be next. I will get you to Tucson, and you will tell the federal marshal everything. Thorne's reach does not extend that far, not with evidence like you have." "You do not know him," Lily whispered. "He owns everyone. He will find a way to silence me." "Not while I'm alive," Quinn said, and the fierce determination in his voice made her believe him. They sat together in the growing light, and Lily realized she was still holding Quinn's hand. She should let go, propriety demanded it, but she found she did not want to. His presence made her feel safe in a way she had not felt since her mother died 5 years ago, leaving her alone in the world. "You should try to sleep," Quinn said after a while. "I will keep watch. What about you? You have been awake as long as I have. I will rest later. For now, one of us needs to be alert in case Thorne's men pick up our trail." Lily wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling at her like a weight. She stretched out on her bedroll in the shade of the willows, and despite her fear and the strangeness of sleeping on the ground in the middle of the desert, she fell asleep almost immediately. She woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of a small fire crackling. The sun was high overhead, and the heat was intense even in the shade. Quinn was crouched by the fire, pouring coffee into 2 tin cups. He looked up when she stirred and gave her a slight smile. "Good afternoon. I let you sleep longer than I should have, but you needed it." Lily sat up, wincing at her sore muscles. "Did you rest at all?" "A few hours. That is all I need." He handed her a cup of coffee and some jerky. "Eat something. We will move out in an hour when the worst of the heat is past." The coffee was strong and bitter, but it helped clear the fog from her mind. She studied Quinn as she ate, taking in details she had missed in the chaos of the previous night. He was probably close to 30, with the weathered look of a man who spent most of his time outdoors. There were scars on his hands and a puckered mark on his neck that might have been from a bullet or a knife. His eyes, though, were what captured her attention. They were watchful and guarded, but when he looked at her, she saw warmth there, and something else that made her pulse quicken. "You said you have been waiting for a chance to bring down Thorne," she said. "Why did you not go to the law yourself after your brother died?" Quinn's expression darkened. "I did. The sheriff said it was an accident. The judge refused to investigate. I had no proof, just my certainty that Thorne was behind it. If I had pushed harder, I would have ended up dead or in prison on some trumped-up charge. So I waited and watched, hoping for an opportunity." He met her eyes. "You are that opportunity, Lily. Your testimony in those ledgers can finally bring that man to justice." The way he said her name sent a shiver through her despite the heat. "What will you do after, when this is over?" "I have not thought that far ahead. I have spent the past 2 years working as a ranch hand, moving from place to place, never settling. Maybe when Thorne is behind bars, I can figure out what comes next." "That sounds lonely." Quinn shrugged, but she saw the truth of it in his eyes. "Lonely is safer. Anyone close to me becomes a target." "I understand that," Lily said quietly. "I have kept people at a distance since my mother died. It seemed easier than risking more loss." They looked at each other across the small fire, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition perhaps of kindred souls shaped by grief and forced into isolation by circumstance. Lily felt the walls around her heart, so carefully constructed over the years, beginning to crack. The moment was broken by a distant sound, faint but distinct. Hoofbeats and more than one horse. Quinn was on his feet instantly, kicking dirt over the fire. "They found us! Get to the horses now!" They mounted quickly, but before they could ride out of the canyon, riders appeared at the far end, blocking their escape. 4 men, all wearing the hard expressions of hired guns. Lily recognized one of them, a cruel-faced man named Decker, who worked as Thorne's enforcer. "Well, well," Decker called out, his hand resting on the butt of his pistol. "Miss Whitmore, Mr. Thorne has been awful worried about you. He sent us to bring you home safe. I am not going back, Lily said, fighting to keep her voice steady. I am afraid that is not your choice, miss. Decker's eyes shifted to Quinn. You must be the drifter who is helping her. Step aside and ride on, and we will let you live. This is not your fight. She is under my protection, Quinn said calmly. You want her? You will have to go through me. Decker laughed. 4 against 1? I like those odds. 2 against 4, Lily said, surprising herself. She had never fired a gun in anger, but she had learned to shoot growing up on the farm. And I am guessing Mr. Thorne wants me alive, which means you will be more worried about not hitting me than we will be about hitting you. The calculation flickered in Decker's eyes. He was smart enough to know she was right. Mr. Thorne does want you alive, but he never said anything about you being unharmed. Could be you fall off your horse on the way back, break an arm or a leg. Unfortunate, but these things happen. Could be you never make it back at all, Quinn said, and his voice had gone cold and dangerous. Could be the desert claims all 4 of you, and nobody ever knows what happened. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then one of the other men, younger and more nervous than Decker, shifted in his saddle. His horse took a step forward, and that small movement was enough to break the stalemate. Everything happened at once. Quinn's hand flashed to his gun, and he fired 2 shots in rapid succession. The young man cried out and fell from his horse, clutching his shoulder. Another man went for his weapon, and Quinn shot him too, this time in the leg. Lily pulled her own pistol with shaking hands and fired at Decker, more to distract him than with any expectation of hitting him. The shot went wide, but it was enough to make him duck. "Ride!" Quinn shouted, and they were galloping back the way they had come, up out of the canyon. More shots rang out behind them, bullets whining past uncomfortably close. One struck a rock near Juniper's hooves, and the mare shied, but kept running. Quinn led them over rough ground where pursuit would be difficult. And when Lily looked back, she saw that only 2 of the 4 men were following. The other 2 had stayed behind, one wounded and one tending to him. They rode hard for another hour, until Quinn found a slot canyon barely wide enough for the horses to pass through single file. He led them deep into its shadowy recesses, then helped Lily dismount and pressed a finger to his lips. They waited in tense silence as the sound of hoofbeats passed by the canyon mouth and faded into the distance. They lost us, Quinn whispered finally. But it was too close. They are tracking us better than I expected. Thorne must have hired a real scout, not just thugs. Lily's hands were still shaking from the adrenaline. I shot at a man. I cannot believe I did that. You did what you had to do to survive. There is no shame in that. Quinn holstered his gun and checked his horse for injuries. We need to change our route. They are expecting us to head straight for Tucson. We will go north first, into rougher country where they will have a harder time following, then swing west and come at Tucson from a different direction. Will that not take longer? A few extra days, but it is safer, and it gives us time to lose them for good. They led the horses deeper into the slot canyon, looking for a place to rest and plan their next move. The canyon walls rose high on either side, carved into fantastic shapes by ancient floods, and it was mercifully cool in the shade. Quinn found a spot where the canyon widened into a small amphitheater, with a spring trickling down one wall into a shallow pool. As they tended to the horses, Lily found herself watching Quinn move with efficient grace, checking Juniper's legs for any injuries and murmuring soothingly to the mare. He was gentle with the animals, and she liked that about him. It spoke to a fundamental kindness beneath his hard exterior. "Thank you," she said impulsively, "for what you did back there. You could have been killed." Quinn looked up at her, his hand stilling on Juniper's bridle. "So could you. That was brave, what you did. Foolish, maybe, but brave. I do not feel brave. I feel terrified. Brave and terrified are not opposites. Real courage is being scared and doing what needs to be done anyway." He moved closer to her, his eyes searching her face. "You have more steel in you than you know, Lily Whitmore." The way he looked at her made her breath catch. They were standing very close now, close enough that she could see the silver flecks in his brown eyes and the small scar through his left eyebrow. The danger they had just survived, the adrenaline still thrumming through her veins, all of it combined to create a reckless feeling in her chest. "Quinn," she said softly, and she was not entirely sure what she was asking for. He seemed to understand anyway. His hand came up to cup her cheek, his callous thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "This is a bad idea," he murmured, but he did not pull away. "Probably," Lily agreed. Then she rose onto her toes and kissed him. For a heartbeat, Quinn went still. Then his arms came around her, pulling her close, and he was kissing her back with a hunger that matched her own. His lips were warm and firm, and when the kiss deepened, Lily felt heat bloom through her entire body. She had been kissed before, chased pecks from proper suitors back in Kansas, but nothing like this. This was fire and need and connection. This was two lonely people finding solace in each other against a hostile world. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Quinn rested his forehead against hers. "That was definitely a bad idea," he said, but there was a smile in his voice. "We could die tomorrow," Lily said. "Tonight, I just want to feel alive." They made camp in the amphitheater as the sun set, painting the canyon walls in shades of gold and crimson. Quinn built a small fire, shielded from view by the rocks, and they ate a simple meal of beans and hardtack. The conversation flowed easier now, the kiss having broken down some barrier between them. They talked about their lives before this, sharing memories and dreams. Lily told him about growing up on a farm in Kansas, about her mother's flower garden and her father's booming laugh. Quinn talked about his childhood in Texas, about learning to ride before he could walk and following his father's cattle drives each summer. "What brought you to Arizona?" Lily asked. "Daniel, my brother." Quinn stared into the fire, his expression distant. "He came out here looking for a fresh start after the war. Wrote me letters about the opportunities, the land, the future we could build. So I followed him. Worked on ranches, saved money, planned to buy our own spread someday." His jaw tightened. "Then Thorne happened. Daniel died, and I have been drifting ever since. I am sorry. I know what it is like to lose family." "Your mother?" "Consumption. She fought it for 2 years, but in the end, it took her. I tried to keep the farm going after, but I was alone and the bank wanted their money. I lost everything and came west looking for work. Found the job with Thorne, thought I was lucky." She laughed bitterly. "Some luck." Quinn reached across the fire and took her hand. "Maybe the luck is what came after. Maybe it is finding each other. Do you really believe that?" "I am starting to." They sat together in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. The desert night was cool and vast, and for a little while, Lily let herself forget the danger that pursued them. There was only this moment, this man, and the fragile hope blooming in her chest. When they spread their bedrolls, Quinn positioned them close together. "For warmth," he said, but the look in his eyes told a different story. They lay facing each other, and Lily reached out to trace the line of his jaw with her fingertips. "What happens after?" she asked quietly. "After we reach Tucson and I testify?" "I do not know. What do you want to happen?" "I want a life, a real life, not just surviving. I want a home and a future." She hesitated, then pushed forward. "I want to see if this thing between us is real or just danger and proximity." "It feels real to me," Quinn said, catching her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. "But you are right. We should be sure. After Tucson, after Thorne is dealt with, we can take our time. Court proper like, see where it leads." "I would like that." Quinn pulled her close, and she nestled into his warmth. With his arms around her and the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear, Lily finally felt safe enough to sleep. They set out before dawn, riding north into increasingly rugged terrain. Quinn navigated by instinct and the stars, leading them through a maze of canyons and mesas that would baffle anyone trying to follow. They saw no sign of pursuit that day or the next, and Lily began to hope that they had truly lost Thorne's men. On the third day, they came upon a small homestead tucked into a green valley watered by a permanent stream. An older Mexican couple lived there, scratching out a living with a few goats and a vegetable garden. When Quinn explained their situation in fluent Spanish, the husband, whose name was Miguel, invited them to rest for the night and share a meal. The wife, Rosa, fussed over Lily like a mother hen, insisting she bathe and providing her with a clean dress to wear while her own clothes were washed. It felt like luxury after days on the trail, and sitting at a proper table for dinner that night, eating Rosa's delicious chicken mole and fresh tortillas, Lily felt tears prick her eyes at the simple kindness of strangers. After dinner, Rosa pulled her aside while the men smoked on the porch. "That man, he looks at you like you are the sun and the moon," the older woman said in accented English. "He is a good one, I think. You hold on to him." We barely know each other, Lily protested, but her cheeks were warm. The heart knows what it knows. I saw Miguel once, and I knew he would be my husband. 40 years now, we are married. Rosa patted her hand. Trust what you feel. That night, Quinn spread their bedrolls in the barn at Miguel's insistence. The animals were clean and the hay was fresh, and it felt like a palace after sleeping on the ground. In the darkness, Quinn found her hand. You have been quiet tonight, he said. Rosa said something to me, about how you look at me. How do I look at you? Lily turned toward him, wishing she could see his face better in the dim light. She said like I am the sun and the moon. Well, she is not wrong. Quinn's voice was rough with emotion. I know it is fast. I know we should take our time. But Lily, I have not felt this way since before the war, before everything went hard and cold. You make me want things I thought I had given up on. What things? A home, a future, someone to come back to at the end of the day. He pulled her closer. I am falling in love with you, Lily Whitmore. Maybe I already have fallen. And when this is over, I want to do everything right. I want to court you properly and marry you if you will have me. Lily's heart was beating so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Yes, she whispered. Yes to all of it. Quinn kissed her then, slow and deep and full of promise. They held each other in the sweet-smelling hay, and Lily felt the last of her defenses crumble. She had spent so long protecting herself, so long alone, but this man had slipped past every barrier with his quiet strength and unexpected tenderness. She loved him, she realized. Completely and irrevocably loved him. They left the homestead the next morning, laden with supplies that Miguel and Rosa insisted they take. The older couple would not accept payment, saying only that they were glad to help someone stand up to men like Marcus Thorne. Lily hugged Rosa goodbye and promised to write when everything was settled. For 2 more days, they traveled west across high desert, punctuated by volcanic peaks. The landscape was harsh but beautiful, and Lily found herself appreciating it in a new way, seeing it through Quinn's eyes. He pointed out wildlife and plants, teaching her what was safe to eat and what to avoid. He told her stories from his years on the trail, some funny and some sad. And Lily listened hungrily, wanting to know everything about him. They talked about the future they would build together, spinning dreams in the quiet moments. Quinn wanted a small ranch, nothing too ambitious, with good water and enough land for cattle and horses. Lily wanted a garden like her mother's had been, full of vegetables and flowers, and a house with real windows and a porch where they could sit in the evenings. They talked about children, both agreeing they wanted a family, though Quinn made her promise they would wait a year or 2 after marrying. I want you to myself for a while, he said, grinning, before we are surrounded by little ones demanding our attention. I think that is a fine plan, Lily agreed, leaning into his side as they rode. They were only a day from Tucson when everything went wrong. They had stopped to water the horses at a remote spring when shots rang out from the rocks above. Quinn shoved Lily behind a boulder as bullets chipped the stone around them. Through a gap in the rocks, she could see riders approaching from multiple directions. They had been ambushed, and this time there was no easy escape. Stay down, Quinn commanded, returning fire. I count 6 of them. That is too many, Lily said, fear closing her throat. I know. Quinn's face was grim. We need to make a run for those trees, about 50 yards north. On my signal, you run and you do not stop. I will cover you. What about you? I will be right behind you. Now get ready. Quinn fired several shots in quick succession, creating enough chaos that the attackers had to take cover. Now, he shouted, and Lily ran. Her legs pumped as she sprinted across open ground, expecting every second to feel a bullet tear into her back. Behind her, Quinn's gun barked steadily. She made it to the trees and dove behind a thick cottonwood, her lungs burning. Quinn was only seconds behind her, but as he ran, one of the attackers got off a lucky shot. Quinn stumbled and went down. No! Lily screamed. She rushed out to help him, heedless of the danger. Quinn was clutching his side, blood seeping between his fingers. Get back and cover, he gasped. She helped him stagger behind the trees, and he collapsed against a trunk. His face was pale, but his eyes were still alert. It went through. I will be all right. You are not all right. You are bleeding. Lily pressed her hands over the wound, trying to stanch the flow. Listen to me. Quinn grabbed her wrist with his free hand. They are going to rush us soon. When they do, you take Juniper and ride hard for Tucson. Do not stop. Do not look back. I am not leaving you. Lily, you have to. Your testimony is too important. If they catch you, Thorne wins, and everything we have done is for nothing. I do not care. Tears were streaming down her face. I am not losing you, not when I just found you. Quinn pulled her down and kissed her fiercely. I love you. Remember that. Now help me reload my gun, and we will make them pay for every inch. Working together, they prepared for what might be their last stand. Quinn positioned himself where he could cover the most ground despite his injury, and Lily took up position beside him with her pistol, her hands surprisingly steady now that the moment had come. But the rush they expected never came. Instead, a new sound reached them, more gunfire, but from a different direction. Shouts of confusion and pain echoed from where the attackers had been positioned. Lily and Quinn exchanged bewildered looks. Stay here, Quinn said, but Lily shook her head. Where you go, I go. They moved cautiously forward and found a scene of chaos. 2 of their attackers were down, and the others were fleeing on horseback. Standing among the rocks were 3 men in the blue uniforms of the United States Cavalry, rifles still raised. The sergeant, a weathered man with gray in his beard, approached with his hands visible. You folks all right? We heard the shooting from our patrol. We need help, Lily called. My friend is wounded. The soldiers came forward, and one of them, who had medical training, examined Quinn's injury. Bullet went clean through, missed anything vital. You are lucky, mister. I can bandage it up, but you need a real doctor soon. As the soldier worked, the sergeant questioned them. When Lily explained who she was and what she had witnessed, his expression turned serious. Marcus Thorne, you say? There have been complaints about him reaching the territorial government, but nothing concrete enough to act on. If you have evidence, miss, you need to get to the federal marshal in Tucson immediately. That is where we were heading, Quinn said through gritted teeth as his wound was bandaged. Then you will ride with us. We are heading back to Fort Lowell, just outside Tucson. Nobody will dare attack a cavalry patrol. The sergeant smiled. Looks like you 2 have friends in high places, whether you knew it or not. With the soldiers' protection, they reached Tucson the following afternoon. The town was larger than Gila Bend, a bustling hub of commerce and territorial government. The sergeant took them directly to the federal marshal's office, where Lily told her story to a stern-faced man named Marshal Garrett. She showed him her journal, and his expression grew darker with every page he read. This is enough to hang Thorne twice over, he said finally. Miss Whitmore, with your testimony and this evidence, we can finally put that man away for good. I will need you to make an official statement, and then we will arrange for your protection until the trial. When will that be? Lily asked. Given the severity of the crimes and the prominence of the accused, probably within the month. The territorial judge will want to handle this quickly before Thorne can intimidate more witnesses or destroy evidence. Quinn, who had been sitting pale and quiet while the fort doctor treated his wound properly, spoke up. I can provide testimony, too, about my brother's death. We will take your statement as well, Mr. Jameson. The marshal studied them both. You 2 did a brave thing, bringing this to light. A lot of people will sleep better, knowing Thorne cannot hurt them anymore. The next weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Lily and Quinn were housed in a hotel under guard, and Lily spent hours with lawyers going over every detail of what she had witnessed and recorded. Word spread quickly through the territory that Marcus Thorne had been arrested and would stand trial for murder, fraud, and a dozen other charges. Witnesses who had been too afraid to speak before came forward with their own stories of Thorne's crimes. Quinn healed slowly, the wound to his side sore but clean. Lily tended him with anxious care, changing his bandages and making sure he rested. In the evenings, when the lawyers and guards left them alone, they sat together and talked about the future that was finally starting to feel real. After the trial, I want to marry you immediately, Quinn said one night, holding her hand. I do not want to waste any more time. Neither do I. We can find a ranch somewhere, start fresh. I was thinking maybe not too far from here. Tucson is big enough to have what we need, but there is good land around it. Quinn smiled. Plus, we should stay close enough to visit Miguel and Rosa sometimes. I like them. I did too. Lily leaned her head on his shoulder. Did you ever imagine, when you agreed to help Sam get me to safety, that it would lead to this? Not even for a moment. I thought I would deliver you, collect my payment, and drift on like I always did. He kissed the top of her head. Thank God I was wrong. The trial began on a crisp October morning. The courthouse was packed with spectators, and armed guards were everywhere to prevent any attempt at violence or intimidation. Marcus Thorne sat at the defendant's table, looking older and smaller than Lily remembered, his arrogance finally stripped away. When Lily took the stand, her heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear the prosecutor's questions. But when she looked at Quinn, sitting in the front row with encouragement clear on his face, she found her courage. She described in clear, steady detail what she had seen that night in the alley. She presented the ledgers and explained each fraudulent transaction, each theft, each use of violence to increase Thorne's holdings. The defense attorney tried to shake her testimony, suggesting she was mistaken, that she had a grudge, that she was being paid to lie. But Lily held firm, and when the lawyer pushed too hard, Quinn half rose from his seat with a dangerous look on his face. The judge gavelled for order, and the attorney backed off. Quinn testified next, telling the story of his brother's death. Other witnesses followed, a parade of people whose lives had been destroyed by Thorne's greed. By the time the prosecution rested, the case was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood and read the verdict. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Marcus Thorne to death by hanging for the murder of William Hayes, with additional sentences for his other crimes running consecutively in case the death sentence was somehow overturned on appeal. Lily watched as guards led Thorne away, and she felt a weight she had been carrying for months finally lift from her shoulders. It was over. The nightmare was truly over. Outside the courthouse, Quinn swept her into his arms, lifting her off her feet despite his healing injury. "You did it! You brought him down!" "We did it," Lily corrected, laughing and crying at the same time. Together. That night, there was a celebration of sorts at the hotel, with the lawyers and Marshal Garrett toasting to justice. But Lily and Quinn slipped away early, wanting to be alone. They walked through Tucson's plaza, where music drifted from a cantina, and lanterns glowed warmly in the October evening. "Will you marry me?" Quinn asked, pulling her to a stop under a cottonwood tree. "I know I asked before, but I want to do this proper. Lily Whitmore, you are the bravest, strongest woman I have ever known. You have given me back something I thought I had lost forever. Hope for the future. Will you be my wife?" "Yes," Lily said, her heart overflowing. "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." They were married 3 days later by a judge in a simple ceremony, with Marshal Garrett and his wife as witnesses. Lily wore a new dress in pale blue that the marshal's wife helped her pick out, and Quinn wore a new suit that actually fit his tall frame. It was nothing fancy, but when they exchanged vows in the judge's chambers, Lily felt like she was living in a dream. "I promise to protect you, to honor you, to love you all the days of my life," Quinn said, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise to stand beside you, to build a life with you, to love you through whatever comes," Lily replied. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Quinn kissed her thoroughly enough that the marshal cleared his throat in amusement. Lily did not care. She was married to the man she loved, and the future stretched before them, bright with possibility. They spent their wedding night at the hotel, and finally, after weeks of tension and danger, they could simply be together. Quinn was gentle and passionate, treating her like she was precious and breakable and strong all at once. Lily had never felt so cherished, so completely loved. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the lamplight, and Quinn traced patterns on her shoulder with his fingertips. "I was dead inside before I met you," he said quietly. "Going through the motions, just existing. You brought me back to life, Lily." "You saved me," she replied. "In every way a person can be saved." They stayed in Tucson through November, waiting for the paperwork from the trial to be finalized and looking for land to buy. Quinn had saved most of his wages from the past 2 years, and combined with the reward money they received for bringing Thorne to justice, they had enough for a modest down payment on a property. They found it 20 miles south of Tucson, 100 acres with a year-round creek, good grass, and a small adobe house that needed work, but had good bones. The previous owner had given up trying to ranch it alone and was eager to sell. They signed the papers in early December and moved in the week before Christmas. The house was small, just 3 rooms, but it was theirs. They spent the first month fixing it up, patching the roof, and chinking the gaps in the adobe. Quinn built furniture while Lily sewed curtains and cleaned. They bought a milk cow and some chickens, and Quinn started working for neighboring ranches to earn extra money while they built up their own herd. Life settled into a rhythm that was hard work but deeply satisfying. They rose with the sun and worked until dark, then fell into bed, exhausted but happy. In the evenings, they sat on the porch they built together and watched the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and purple. In the spring, Lily realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but had not been sure until she missed her monthly cycle for the third time. She told Quinn one evening after dinner when they were sitting together watching the stars emerge. "I am going to have a baby," she said, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. "Our baby." Quinn's face went through a dozen emotions in rapid succession: shock, joy, fear, wonder. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be. I think it will be born in late September or early October." Quinn pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "I am going to be a father," he said in wonder. "We are going to be parents." "Are you happy?" Lily asked, suddenly nervous. "Happy does not begin to cover it. I am terrified and thrilled and grateful all at once." He pulled back to look at her face. "You are sure you are all right? You are feeling well?" "I feel wonderful. Tired, and my stomach is a little unsettled in the mornings, but wonderful." They spent the rest of the evening making plans, deciding which room would become the nursery, discussing names. Quinn became even more protective than usual, insisting that Lily not do heavy work, though she laughed and told him she was not made of glass. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the summer. Miguel and Rosa visited in July, bringing gifts for the baby and staying for a week to help with the harvest from Lily's garden. Rosa told Lily stories about her own pregnancies and gave her advice about childbirth that was both reassuring and terrifying. "You are strong," the older woman said, patting her hand. "You survived Marcus Thorne and the desert. You will survive this too." Quinn was attentive to the point of being comical, jumping up to fetch anything Lily needed and refusing to let her ride horses or do anything he deemed remotely dangerous. When she pointed out that women had been having babies while doing hard work for thousands of years, he just shook his head stubbornly. "Other women are not my wife carrying my child," he said. "Humor me." So Lily humored him, letting him fuss and worry, secretly touched by how much he cared. Labor started on a warm October afternoon when Lily was hanging wash on the line. Her water broke without warning, soaking her dress, and within minutes, the contractions began. Quinn rode hard for the neighbor's house, where a woman named Mrs. Patterson, who had delivered half the babies in the county, agreed to come help. The labor was long and hard, lasting through the night and into the next morning. Quinn paced in the main room, hearing Lily's cries and feeling helpless and terrified. Mrs. Patterson kept assuring him that everything was normal, that his wife was doing fine, but it did not stop him from imagining every terrible thing that could go wrong. Finally, as the sun rose on the second day of October, 1879, a baby's cry filled the house. Mrs. Patterson emerged from the bedroom, smiling broadly. "You have a son, Mr. Jameson, a big, healthy boy, and your wife is tired but doing well." Quinn nearly collapsed with relief. He rushed into the bedroom, where Lily lay propped against pillows, her hair sweat-soaked and her face exhausted but radiant. In her arms was a tiny bundle, and when Quinn approached, she pulled back the blanket to show him their son. The baby had dark hair like his father, and was currently red-faced and squalling with impressive volume. But to Quinn, he was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen, after his mother. "We made a person," Lily said, wonder in her voice. "Quinn, look what we made." Quinn sat on the edge of the bed and very carefully took his son into his arms. The baby quieted, blinking up at him with unfocused blue eyes. "Hello, little one," Quinn whispered, his throat tight with emotion. "I am your papa, and I promise I am going to take such good care of you." "What should we name him?" Lily asked. They had discussed names endlessly, but had not been able to decide. Now, holding his son, Quinn knew exactly what felt right. "Daniel," he said, "after my brother, if that is all right with you." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Daniel William Jameson, after your brother and the man whose death brought us together." "That is perfect." Mrs. Patterson stayed for a week, helping Lily recover and teaching her how to care for the baby. Daniel was a good baby, strong and healthy, though he had impressive lungs when he wanted something. Quinn was besotted, holding his son every chance he got and staring at him in wonder. "I cannot believe something this perfect came from me," he said one night, watching Daniel sleep in the cradle he had built. "He came from both of us," Lily corrected, "and he is perfect because he is ours." The first year of Daniel's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and exhausted joy. Quinn continued working neighboring ranches while building up their own small herd, and Lily managed the house and the baby and the garden. It was hard work, but they were happy in a deep, bone-deep way that neither had ever expected to feel. They received word that Marcus Thorne had been hanged in February of 1880, and while Lily felt a grim satisfaction that justice had been served, she also felt closure. That chapter of her life was finished, and she could move forward without looking over her shoulder. In the spring of 1881, Lily discovered she was pregnant again. Daniel was walking now, getting into everything, and the thought of adding another baby to the chaos was daunting. But Quinn was delighted, and his joy was infectious. This pregnancy was harder than the first, and Lily was sick for months. Quinn hired a young woman from town to come help during the days, and he took over more of the household work in addition to the ranch duties. By the time Lily's stomach was big enough that she could barely see her own feet, she was ready to be done with pregnancy forever. Their daughter was born in November, arriving quickly after a short but intense labor. She was smaller than Daniel had been, with blonde hair like her mother and gray eyes that would eventually turn brown. "What about Sarah?" Quinn suggested, cradling his daughter with the same awed expression he had worn when holding Daniel for the first time. "After your mother." "Sarah Rose Jameson," Lily said, smiling through happy tears. "It is beautiful." Life with two young children was chaotic and exhausting and wonderful. Daniel adored his baby sister, wanting to help with everything, though his help often consisted of bringing her rocks and bugs that he thought she would like. Quinn divided his time between ranch work and being a devoted father, teaching Daniel to ride and helping with the children's care in ways that shocked their more traditional neighbors. "A man's place is not changing diapers," one of the neighbors told Quinn disapprovingly. "A man's place is helping his wife and raising his children," Quinn replied evenly. "If that includes changing diapers, so be it." The ranch prospered slowly but steadily. By 1883, they had a decent herd of cattle and were able to hire a hand to help Quinn with the work. The adobe house got an addition, adding 2 more bedrooms and a larger kitchen. Lily's garden grew every year, and she started selling vegetables and preserves in town for extra money. They made friends among their neighbors, attended church socials, and became part of the community. The story of how they had brought down Marcus Thorne was known, and it gave them a certain respect. People knew that Quinn and Lily Jameson were not to be trifled with, but they were also fair and kind, always ready to help a neighbor in need. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Quinn surprised Lily by taking her to Tucson for a night, leaving the children with Mrs. Patterson. They stayed at the same hotel where they had spent their wedding night, and over dinner, Quinn gave her a gift, a delicate gold locket on a chain. "Open it," he urged. Inside were 2 tiny photographs, one of each of their children. "So you can carry them with you always," Quinn said, "the way I carry you in my heart." Lily fastened the locket around her neck, her eyes damp. "I love you so much. Sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life. It is real, all of it." Quinn reached across the table and took her hand. "You know what I think about sometimes? That day in Gila Bend when Sam sent me to protect you. I almost said no. I almost walked away because I was tired and it seemed like too much trouble." "What changed your mind?" "Sam mentioned that Thorne was involved, and I realized I would never get another chance like that, to hurt the man who killed my brother. So I went to your door ready to do a job and collect my pay." He shook his head, smiling. "I had no idea I was walking toward the rest of my life." "We both were," Lily said, "walking toward each other through all the danger and uncertainty. And somehow, we found our way." They returned to the ranch the next day to find Daniel and Sarah full of stories about their adventure with Mrs. Patterson. Life returned to its normal rhythm of work and family, but Lily found herself appreciating it even more after a night away. This was what she had dreamed of during those terrifying days fleeing across the desert. A home, a family, a man who loved her completely. The years rolled on, bringing their share of challenges and triumphs. There were droughts and cattle diseases, injuries and illnesses, the ordinary struggles of ranch life. But there were also birthdays and holidays, watching the children grow, quiet evenings on the porch with Quinn's arm around her shoulders. In 1885, Miguel passed away peacefully in his sleep. Quinn and Lily traveled to the homestead for the funeral, bringing the children. Rosa was stoic in her grief, surrounded by the large extended family that Lily had not known about. After the service, Rosa pulled Lily aside. "He was happy at the end," the older woman said. "He told me just last week how proud he was that we helped you and Quinn. He said you two gave him hope that good people could still win against evil." "We never forgot his kindness," Lily said, tears streaming down her face. "He helped save our lives." Rosa patted her cheek. "And you gave him a good story to tell. That was a gift, too." They stayed with Rosa for a week, helping her settle Miguel's affairs and making sure she would be all right. Quinn invited her to come live with them, but Rosa declined with a smile. "This is my home," she said. "All my memories of Miguel are here, but I will visit, and you must visit me." They kept that promise, making the trip several times a year. The children loved Rosa, calling her abuela, and she spoiled them shamelessly with sweets and stories. In 1887, when Daniel was 8 and Sarah was 6, Lily realized she was pregnant again. She and Quinn had thought they were done having children, and the news was both surprising and a little overwhelming. But Quinn was as delighted as ever, and the children were excited about having a brother or sister. The baby, another boy they named Thomas, was born in March of 1888. He was a serious baby, rarely crying, but watching everything with solemn eyes. Daniel and Sarah were old enough to be genuinely helpful now, and they competed to see who could make the baby smile first. With 3 children, the house felt full and loud and chaotic in the best possible way. Quinn added another room to accommodate Thomas, and they bought more land, expanding the ranch. They were not wealthy by any means, but they were comfortable, with enough to feed and clothe their children and save a little for the future. On a summer evening in 1890, Quinn and Lily sat on their porch watching the sunset, as they had done 1,000 times before. Daniel was in the barn doing evening chores, Sarah was reading to Thomas, and the ranch was peaceful around them. "Do you ever think about how different our lives could have been?" Lily asked, leaning against Quinn's shoulder. "If I had not witnessed that murder, if Sam had not sent you to help me." "All the time," Quinn admitted. "But I try not to think about it too much. It makes me dizzy, all the little moments that had to happen exactly right to bring us here. I am glad they did. Happen exactly right, I mean." "So am I." Quinn kissed her temple. "I love you, Lily Jameson. After all these years, I love you more than ever. And I love you. You are everything I never knew I needed." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching their hard-won paradise turn golden in the last light of day. Behind them, they could hear the children's laughter, and around them was the ranch they had built together from nothing but determination and love. The journey that had brought them together had been born of violence and fear, a desperate flight across a hostile desert with death at their heels. But from that darkness had grown something beautiful and enduring. They had survived, they had testified, they had brought an evil man to justice, and in the process, they had found each other. Now, more than a decade later, their love had grown roots deep enough to weather any storm. They had a family, a home, a life filled with purpose and meaning. The Wild West was slowly being tamed around them, but in this small corner of Arizona, Quinn and Lily Jameson had created their own piece of paradise. As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Quinn pulled Lily closer, and she went willingly, fitting against his side the way she had since that first night in the desert when they had started to fall in love. They had been through hell together and come out the other side stronger for it. "Tell me something," Quinn said softly. "If you could go back and do it all differently, knowing what you know now, would you?" Lily thought about the fear, the exhaustion, the moments when she had been certain they would die. She thought about the bullet that had torn through Quinn's side and the trial where she had to relive the worst night of her life. Then she thought about the man beside her, the children inside the house, the life they had built from ashes. "No," she said firmly, "I would not change a single thing, because every moment, good and bad, led me to you, and that makes it all worth it." Quinn tightened his arm around her, and they stayed there on the porch long after the stars came out, two souls who had found each other in the darkness and chosen to walk toward the light together. Their story had begun with blood and fear, with testimony that brought down the richest man in the territory. But it had become something far greater, a love story written across the wild Arizona desert, tested by fire and proven true. Inside the house, their children settled down for sleep, safe and loved. The ranch around them was quiet except for the familiar sounds of horses in the corral, and the whisper of wind through the mesquite. Tomorrow would bring more work, more challenges, the endless cycle of building a life in a hard land. But tonight, Quinn and Lily had everything they needed, each other, their family, and the certainty that they had earned their happiness through courage and sacrifice. Years later, when their grandchildren asked about how they met, Lily and Quinn would share a look across the room, a lifetime of understanding passing between them in a glance. Then they would begin the story of a woman who witnessed a murder, a cowboy who protected her, and the dangerous journey that transformed them both. They would tell about Marcus Thorne's fall and the trial that brought justice to the Arizona territory. But mostly they would tell about love found in the most unlikely circumstances, about two wounded souls who healed each other and built something lasting and true. The story always ended the same way, with Quinn taking Lily's hand and saying what had become his favorite line. She was running for her life, and I was running for mine. Somehow, we ran straight into each other and decided to stop running altogether. And Lily would add, her eyes bright with tears and joy, "Best decision we ever made." Their children and grandchildren would nod, having heard the story many times but never tiring of it. Because it was not just a story about danger and justice, though it was certainly that. It was a story about hope and second chances, about finding love when you least expected it, about building something beautiful from broken pieces. The ranch prospered through the 1890s and into the new century. Daniel grew up to be a skilled rancher like his father, eventually marrying a schoolteacher from Tucson and building a house on the northern section of the property. Sarah became a teacher herself, marrying a doctor and moving to Phoenix, though she visited often with her own children. Thomas, the serious baby, surprised everyone by becoming a lawyer, using his intelligence and determination to help people who could not help themselves, carrying on his parents' legacy of standing up for justice. Quinn and Lily grew older together, their love deepening with every passing year. Quinn's hair went silver, but his eyes remained bright, and Lily's face showed the marks of sun and laughter, but she was still beautiful to him, still the brave woman who had changed his entire world. They worked the ranch as long as they were able, then gradually turned it over to Daniel while they enjoyed their grandchildren and each other. On their 30th wedding anniversary, they made a pilgrimage back to Gila Bend. The town had changed, grown larger and more modern, but the alley where William Hayes had died was still there. They stood together in that spot, remembering. "Do you think we made a difference?" Lily asked quietly. "Beyond just stopping Thorne?" "I know we did," Quinn replied. "Every person we helped over the years, every fair deal we made, every time we chose kindness over cruelty, we made a difference. And our children will make a difference. That is the real legacy, Lily. Not just bringing down one bad man, but building something good in his place." They walked through the town, hand in hand, two old-timers now, though they did not feel old. They felt like the same young people who had fled across the desert in terror, only now that terror had been transformed into wisdom, and their desperate love had been refined into something unbreakable. Before leaving Gila Bend, they visited the cemetery and found William Hayes's grave. Someone had placed fresh flowers there recently, and a new headstone had replaced the simple wooden cross. The inscription read, "William Hayes, honest prospector, murdered by greed but avenged by courage. May his death not be in vain." "It was not in vain," Lily said, touching the stone. "I made sure of that." "We made sure of that," Quinn corrected gently, as he always did when she tried to take all the responsibility on herself. They returned to their ranch as the sun set, painting the desert in the familiar golds and purples they had loved for 3 decades. Their grandchildren were waiting, having planned a surprise party for the anniversary. There was music and dancing, food and laughter, and at the center of it all were Quinn and Lily, still holding hands after all these years. Late that night, after everyone had gone home or to bed, they sat on their porch one more time. The stars were brilliant overhead, as they always were in the desert, and the night air was cool and sweet. 30 years, Lily marveled. It seems like no time at all, and also like we have always been together. Time is strange that way. The years go fast, but they are full. Quinn pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder. "Thank you, Lily." "For what?" "For trusting me in that hallway all those years ago, for riding through the night with me, for being brave enough to testify, for saying yes when I asked you to marry me, for every day since then." His voice was rough with emotion. "You gave me my life back. Without you, I would have died alone and bitter, still chasing a revenge I could never achieve on my own. You saved me first, Lily reminded him. You protected me when I had no one else. Then I guess we saved each other. I guess we did. They stayed there until the moon rose high, two people who had faced death together and chosen life, who had seen the worst humanity had to offer, and decided to create something better. Their story was one of courage and justice, but it was also a love story, pure and simple, a love born in danger, tested by hardship, and proven true by time. As they finally rose to go inside, Quinn paused to look back at the ranch spread out in the moonlight. Their ranch, their home, their life together, hard-won and deeply cherished. You know what the best part is? He said to Lily. What? We get to do it all again tomorrow. Wake up together, work together, love each other, every single day for the rest of our lives. Lily smiled and took his hand. That sounds perfect to me. They walked inside together, closing the door on another day in the long, beautiful story of their lives. Outside, the desert night continued its ancient rhythms, and the stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance. The Wild West that had formed them was slowly fading into history, but the love Quinn and Lily Jameson had forged in its fire would endure, passed down through generations as a testament to courage, justice, and the transformative power of love found against all odds. Their testimony had brought down the richest man in the territory, but in saving each other, they had become far wealthier than Marcus Thorne could ever have imagined. They had love, family, purpose, and a life lived with integrity and joy. They had won in every way that mattered, and they spent the rest of their days grateful for every moment of their improbable, beautiful, hard-won happiness.